format for this then is really just going to be, as you see it, the men will sit, we'll have a bit of a chat, a bit of a conversation, and it's really more like these are just eavesdropping in on us. So that's the format. And so I'm going to ask Andrew to come up first and foremost to come and just have a seat in the hot seat.
Yes.
And so, no problem at all.
I'm not
So-
sure if I trust this seat.
Hello everyone.
So Andrew is one of our newer members in the church. He's been with us really for about just over a year now, sort of attending regularly.
Yeah.
So I suppose maybe just a few kind of questions just to get people to sort of find out where they are with you.
Sure thing.
Tell us what you do with yourself. Just if you want to point out your wife and give her a bit of a shout out.
Yes, yes.
And maybe just a wee bit about pets and sort of some of the
Oh, yes,
animals that you have at the house.
The basics, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is my wife Anna. My mum's here today as well. I'm Andrew. I feel like I'm in a job interview.
It kind of is.
I'm 30, I live in Ards. I'm a support worker in a wee brain injury unit in Newton Ards. Been doing that for 2 years. So before that, I was a support worker with challenging behaviour for 6 years. Hopefully, getting back into that field shortly. Yeah, and pets. I've 3 dogs, and a parrot, 2 dash lines, and a Labrador. And that's the life of Andrew in a nutshell.
Okay, so in terms then of just trying to set the scene for folks, you grew up basically in and around church. So tell us a wee bit just about those early years at James Street.
Oh yes, well, I've always said that the best thing my mum actually ever done for me was send me to Sunday school at those young ages. Because the men at, I'm not sure if anyone here is familiar with James's Street Gospel Hall, but my uncle was a member there, and he died whenever I was an infant. But for years, his friends and the members there always came visiting my grandparents and my mum, and I always appreciated that. So whenever they would come, or whenever I was in Sunday school, there's always something different about these men, and even their wives and their children. You know, something very unique that I just could put my finger on at those ages. And that's when I, took God seriously. You know, and as I believed what these men said, really resonated with me.
Yeah, because your reason for going is a wee bit different to some of the other reasons that some people went.
Yeah. Oh yes. Of course, I had one fella there that I was actually in primary school with, and I remember very fondly something he said, because his grandma sent him, and he said, I don't know where he's 6 or 7 or 8. I only go because of the money, because you got money for answering Bible questions, right? Or, he ever got the most right, got £1 or something like that. That's what he said, and it always kind of stuck with me, because that's not really where I enjoy going to do, quite honest,
I grew up in Ballymena, that was unheard of.
Was it?
It's unheard of. They took the pound off you, but
Yes. I'm sure they still do something like that, but that's what they done. It's not feeling old, but 25 years ago, or 20 years ago. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, look, so because we don't have an awful lot of time, let's fast forward a wee bit then. So, as a believer then in your teens, let's kind of talk around that sort of 17, 18 kind of a bracket.
Yeah.
Things then started to maybe change a little bit. It wasn't always smooth sailing.
No, certainly not. As far as I was concerned, I had this great struggle within my mind in terms of God, because I didn't have any Christian friends at all. Most of my family weren't really believers or attended church regularly or anything, I guess. So my influence came from my friends, and of course they weren't really a good influence, to be honest. And I was just kind of tossed and turned between, do I really believe this? And my friends are convincing me of things otherwise, and it really was difficult. But during that epoch, that's whenever I actually discovered AEC here and got baptized during this late teens, as I would say. But again, I just be quite honest, after I was baptised here, a few months later, I was in Magaluf with my friends. Again, just that peer pressure, I suppose, me being alone, no friends, no real Christian friends, how can I say it, influence as such. I just easily went along with it, and I really did struggle during those times.
But Magaluf was that kind of moment of, there was a realization there, wasn't there?
Oh,
About, so there was a very sort of
remarkable, yeah. Any time I did fall into these wee episodes, I had immense shame and guilt, which they didn't. And they were waking up with hangovers and stuff, and it was just like, right, we're going back out tonight. Whereas me, I felt incredibly guilty. I felt like this is not something that I should be partaking in, and I guess it was there that I really realised that, there's one time I was just looking around at them and they were all drinking, a couple of them were getting with, other people and stuff, and I was just like, is this all Satan really has to offer me? Is this it? I mean, is this what people are really, living their lives for? And that was actually a big eye-opener for me, and I must be about 19 then, and I remember thinking that, that what he offers isn't very much, to be honest.
I suppose then that really kind of launched you into this kind of next phase where it was very much about discovering and studying and searching.
Yeah.
You've spent a lot of time, you've taught yourself Hebrew, Greek.
Yes, yeah. I can read it, but what I'm reading I might not understand. But I done it mostly for if I wanted to look deeper into things in the Word of God, and it really has been a great treasure to me because I've discovered a lot of things using those tools, and I highly recommend anyone, if you've got some free time, to look those up, because it is very easy. It's not as impressive as it sounds. I don't think so anyway. Because if I can do it, anyone can, trust me.
I tried it and I wasn't very good at it.
Seriously,
It was all Greek to me.
It's all Greek. It's actually harder than the Hebrew, to be quite honest.
And I suppose really you've kind of thrown yourself into a lot of apologetics and things like that there. I mean, what were the kind of things that you were asking? What were the kind of things that you were searching for answers?
Yeah, well, even to go just very quickly back to this whole time, my late teens, very early 20s, I had great distress in my mind over this theory of Darwinian evolution that really bothered me a lot, because these scientists were saying things completely contrary to the things of God, completely opposite. And I had this nagging doubt, I don't want to believe something's false, because I don't think I noticed it. And that's whenever I really started to go down deep into the rabbit hole of what these men are really teaching, and some of the things are quite shocking, to be honest.
So let me ask you this question. Would you say that Christians are anti-science?
No, I certainly wouldn't say that at all. Through my own personal, I'm no way an expert in science or anything, but for my own evaluation, whenever I was looking deep into this theory, which has ruined the faith of millions, I feel like the world nearly ruined mine, but very close to it. People don't often look into some of these extreme examples that they give. They like to point out recent changes, but they never go back too far. One of the great examples, I was actually speaking to someone recently who said that they believed in this, and I was like, right, okay. Are you aware of what the ancestor for mammals is according to this theory? And of course he said no. And I said, well, they teach 65 million years ago, when the dinosaurs died, there was a mouse-like creature, and for all intents and purposes was a mouse. And from this mouse came blue whales, rhinos, giraffes, human beings, every mammal, everything. And that was one of the points that really stuck out to me, because me as a rational person, I cannot believe that. That to me is faith without evidence. And there's hundreds of examples like this within Darwinian evolution. And whenever I started to really gather them up, not even evolution, if you look at how they believe the earth was formed, like how we got the moon. Maybe this is a strange question I was Googling. You know, it's all faith based on their part. Whereas I was more convinced at the start that these men had it sus. They really don't, folks. Trust me, take to the bank. They don't. Like, for example, I googled where did the oceans come from. And they say that comets filled with ice hit the earth as it was forming. There's no way they could know that. Like, that is entirely their faith. And they're teaching us, the children in school, as if it's fact. And that's what really annoyed me, you know. Just, there's plenty of examples. I'm not going to sit here and give an example of their stuff. Don't have time, I'd love to, but there was just a couple which really resonated deeply with me, you know.
And I suppose then, with that, it throws you deeper into scripture as well. I mean, full disclosure, we met up on Friday to have a bit of a chat, and we were there for a good while talking through all kinds of different topics. And, I mean, I suppose really, the more you poke and you prod and you look at it, the more scripture holds up to the examination.
Oh, certainly. If you look at the hundreds of prophecies that have been accurately fulfilled, like, to me, the whole Bible is a complete package. It's an amazing book. But the book that stands out to me the most, if you want to go to prove the Bible, I think, you go to the book of Daniel. And it is in there that you have the most amazing detail, and it is detailed. In fact, it's so detailed that the critics say it had to have been written after the event happened because it is so detailed. And all I need to say to anyone, if you've got an hour, if you want to prove scripture at all, any, you know, because the Bible is a package, all you need to do is prove when the book of Daniel was written. If you can come to a conclusion about that fact, because in that he talks about Alexander the Great and onwards, and the book was written far before he was even born. And that's a fact, folks. I've looked it up, I studied it, and trust me.
And so, I mean, we don't have time to get into sort of meeting Anna. We're going to get you up some other night, so we will. Okay,
Yes,
so
yes,
we'll do that some other night. But with everything that's been going on, I suppose you find yourself now at AEC, married, job, and this kind of faith that's got anchors and roots down.
Yes.
So, what do you see God doing in the future then? Is that not? I know that's a very broad, open question.
I remember you said you were going to ask me this. It's probably the hardest thing you've asked me tonight, because obviously I don't know the mind of God in respect to me. But I guess if I did have some sort of dream, I didn't get time to tell you this, but I was actually accepted at the Bible College about 5 years ago. But I never went. I can't go into that right. That'll be a whole other night. To be fair, I didn't go because something was happening in the place I work with. The young man wasn't very well and stuff. So it just wasn't the right time for me to either cut hours or to go. And well, it just wasn't God's will for me at that time, and that's just the way it is. And I accept it. I accept everything that comes to me. So I'm very chill that way. So, but maybe in the future I could probably go to BBC part-time. Me and Alan actually went there before COVID hit. I think it was before COVID, or during COVID, I can't remember. Just to go up and visit and have a look. It's great, but it is ages drive away. That's what I think. But who knows, you know, I would maybe like to look into that again for the future. What I would do with it, I don't know, but that would be a small goal. A big goal, I guess. For me to look into. Sorry I didn't tell you, that's wrong.
Final question then.
Yeah.
Favorite Bible verse?
I wouldn't say favourite, but what I've decided to say. But this is what I said during my baptism here in AEC. And I'll say it again tonight. It was 1 Corinthians 2:9. And it really resonates with me deeply, because it's a verse, you know, it shows that we don't know what God has in store for us in the new earth, because he said so. And he says that I have not seen, nor ear heard, nor hath entered into the heart of man the things that God has prepared for those that love him. And you know, so I can't imagine what heaven's like from that verse. If you take it literally, you can't imagine what it's like. It's going to be far better than this evil world we're in now. You know.
Yeah. Thank you so much
No
for
problem.
sharing.
Yes.
And you can go back, have your seat,
Thank you very
and
much.
breathe out. Enjoy the rest of the night, and we'll pass John to
Yes.
the words of the next song. All right, then, Pastor. Relax. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. They're friendly, most of them.
I know.
Okay, so as most of you know, Billy's you and Bernie have been at the church now for a few years now,
Yeah.
and have sort of settled in and kind of been part of the furniture here now for a while. But you're not from these parts,
No.
so whereabouts did you grow up?
Come from a wee place in North Belfast called Tigers Bay, which was mentioned one time here by the pastor, and that's where I was brought up and reared. And when I was talking to the pastor, he knew a bit about that side of town, only more Ballyselton, not round. But I was brought up in Tigers Bay here. I was brought up through, just as my brother said, about going to church from a wee boy, and went through Sunday school. Was in the BB, was in Lake Boys right through to 17. So I was brought up in the right way. My dad wasn't saved. My mum was saved when she was 13.
So you had that kind of influence in your life, but I suppose in that part of Belfast at that time, there's very much a very strong alternative influence going on as well.
Well, there was, coming just to the age of 15, 16, 17, I left school when I was 15 and started work. And as I said, the UV pastor in the overnight was classed as a corner boy. I stood at the corner of Lewis Street, which we'd been in North Creek Street, Dunkern Gardens, which was like a divide between Catholic and Protestant. And at that time, there was always crowds gathered, and there was always crowds gathered sort of where we were standing type of thing, and just didn't so much intervene at the time of, or purposely stood there because there was people that did, but basically I would just stood there because that's where everybody gathered type of thing.
In case something kicked off.
Well, you did join in. You did join in. It was hard enough.
Yeah. And so kind of moving forward with the story, I mean, you came out of Tigers Bay, you were in Ballybeaten for a while.
Yeah.
But I suppose really, I mean, your story in particular is a story really of two parts.
Yeah.
And like many as a poor man, your story revolves around, it really changes with a woman, okay?
Yeah.
Now, don't need to go into the whole story, but you met a girl, Jean, you were dating for a while, but she ended up in hospital.
Yeah.
That made a big impact because of how that influenced and where that took you. Share a little bit about that.
At the time, I just, as I say, it wasn't long. Well, I got to a place where I just, through coincidence and living next door to her aunts, I got to know her, and was going with her for a while, and she took chicken pox, which actually went internal, and they were on her lungs, and she was got really sick, where she couldn't breathe, and I always remember when the doctor was first out with her, saying she's going to get worse before she gets better. And I remember Jean turned around and saying to her aunts, I need the doctor to come breathe. And you could tell it just the way she was trying to breathe and trying to get her breath, that she actually was fighting for breath in her aunt says, but Jean, I told you, the doctor says, you have to listen to the doctor. The doctor says you're going to get worse before you get better. And Jean just called me to one side and says, look, get in contact with the doctor. I want an ambulance. And that was okay. It finished up, got the ambulance, took her to the hospital. When I took her into the ward to see the doctor said it's a swell she couldn't die, because within so many hours Jean would have been dead, because she couldn't breathe and she would have needed the oxygen to help her to breathe. So I just took it, you know, been brought up through the church, and she was sedated for 5 months with a machine that was breathing for her. And this machine was like, out of 10 breaths she was only breathing 3, and the rest was the machine. But gradually as the weeks went on, and a friend of mine's son had started a church along the north, fell out of the mission, Finnegan, and they've been only going about 6 months. And her aunt said to me one time when she was really, really bad, that you're a churchy person, she says, because she knew my background. I'd been brought up through church and whatever. And she says, do you know anybody? And I says, well, can I ask my mate to find out of his son or their pastor would go on to see her.
So it was really then through this kind of crisis then that you got plugged in back into church.
Yeah.
This church in Finnegan.
Yeah. Well, it finished up by just she came through it, and I just remember, I still up to this day, I can just picture her going up for a checkup, and the 2 big doctors standing up the ward that she was in, saying, one doctor said to the other big doctor was standing, there's a walking miracle, because that's what she was, a walking miracle, because when they looked at the x-rays, they could see her lungs were still filled with the chicken pox, but yet they weren't
She was acting.
they weren't treating the x-ray, they were actually treating the person, and the person was standing in front of them. And so I'd actually said to my friend, son, James, I would have to attend some of the church. So when Jean got out of hospital this time, I went up on a Sunday to Finnegan, and I was sitting and just, I didn't know the situation with Jean and myself at the time, because I just felt that there was something not right there. But I was sitting in the church this night, and I just felt the Spirit leading me, and you know, I done a thing that says to jail. It's something I probably shouldn't really do, but I actually asked God to wait and give me a couple of weeks. And I finished up. When Jean was sedated, her hands, her fingers were tucked in and they had tin foil around them, but it finished up, they were all black because the blood wasn't circulating to the ends of her fingers. So basically what you had to do was go back into the hospital to get tips of her fingers removed. And I remember going up to the Ulster and I said to her, I said, is there still between us, is there something there between us? And she says no, and that was when I realised that it was over. So I knew, I still felt the call, and still felt happy in myself that I went to church that following Sunday, and I would have been the 3rd Sunday in September. And when Stanley gave out at the end of the meeting, was there anybody here that wanted to come give their heart to the Lord? I just put my hand up and tears run down my face, and I said yes, I want to come give my heart to the Lord.
And really then, life takes a very different turn after that, in that, you know, we get rid of Jean Booth, yeah, get rid, okay? And the wonderful Vernie comes into your life, alright, hooray, yes, so much better. And then we,
Unbelievable.
and then, that's good brownie points. But then, not only that, but you find yourself on mission teams and in parts of the world that you never thought, standing in the corners of Tigers Bay, that you'd end up in the 4 corners of the globe. So tell us a little bit. I know you were in India, but there was a real kind of work that kind of was on in Kenya, and also just
Yeah.
tell us a wee bit about that.
Just was going before the Fury and myself got married, we decided to go out to Kenya, and we just couldn't believe just what we're seeing. And because I'd been out in India, and you sort of know the lifestyle in India, and I had that within me when I went to Kenya, and I sort of knew the lifestyle of the third world country and the way they lived in villages and just the way they lived, you know. And when we went to Kenya, it was just that same type of living, and I was sort of used to it where Fury wasn't. And we're just sitting at night with a cold drink on the beach, watching all these young ones, and Fury was sitting there. Says there's a different culture of couples running about up and down the beach, different age groups, you know. And I just looked at her and I says, well, what do you mean? She says, you know, look, there's an every man, a young girl, you know, a white girl and a black man or whatever, you know. I says, Fury, that's they're only they care for money, you know, for what they could get type of thing. And but the more you looked at it and the more you seen it, and we just felt, we sort of prayed about it, in the evenings when after we came back up from the beach and around the town, and you seen this on a regular basis, didn't matter where you went, especially on the beaches. I remember me and Fury were walking along the beach, and this young girl, about 14, 15, came running up, and she says, do you want a Kenya wife? I says, no, I've already got a wife. She's here and she's beside me. And that's how bold they were, you know, that they would come up to you, even as a couple. And I says, no, I don't need a Kenya wife. I says, I've got a wife. One wife's enough. No, I don't need a Kenya wife. No.
There's the quote of the night, folks.
But it is, and we just felt that we actually went out after that first year, went actually back out on the same year, a lot of months later, and went out and took in, when we came home, we decided to sort of, could we do something here? Is there something we can do to help these? And we had this in our mind, and we prayed about it, and we decided if we can get them off the street and get them set up in a wee job, learn them, teach them. So when we did go out, we bought sewing machines, we got in contact with a wee church, and it just, everything seemed to fall into place when we were out there, because the wee church that we attended within the village, and we loved it. And in that one village, there was 3 or 4 different churches you could have went to. But I don't know, we were just seemed to draw this one wee church. And Pastor William had says, oh, we have a guy who works in the town, and you know, he does a lot of street work and stuff like this here. And finished up, he was our main man being in contact with for what we did.
And so then you were trying to really just try and encourage this community and sort of send in resources and sending things out to try and show God's love, like a wee ministry.
Yeah, so we started up, and as I say, we looked to see what we could call it, and we prayed about it, and it finished up, we came up with Rahab Ministries, and we looked up, and even the symbol was like a window with a written coming from it with the cross in it, which we still have a t-shirt. I think I've worn here a few times, but there's still a few t-shirts of them, you know.
It's kind of incredible, that kind of journey though, from Tigers Bay, Valley Bean, Finnegan to India and Kenya.
It's something that only the Lord can do. It is, because it's somebody, a corner's boy, you can only think of so much. You know what you would do, go to work in a shipyard, whatever, go to Spain for your holidays, something like that. Even to be on a plane. I remember when I was going to school, and ones were going to Spain and all, and their holidays. Me and my family were going to Whitehead, down to a wee bungalow. And Whitehead, a wooden bungalow that and that was our holiday. And Verdi used to say, our mum and dad, and it's funny, although we didn't really connect, when I was going to St. Simons as a boy, Verdi's mum and dad actually went to St. Simons, and I can remember them at the far side walking in, like steps, you know, 3 or 4 of them coming up one side, and because I was a bit older than them, I could remember them, their mum and dad very well. And just, it's unbelievable how the world's so small, how God brings people together.
Let me ask you this, and kind of just before we finish up then. What would you say to someone then who's maybe sitting either in church or maybe watching this later on at home? What would you say to someone who says, well, if God couldn't use someone like me, God wouldn't be interested in someone like me?
Well, you know, you said to me about a verse, it's hard to put one specific verse on it, but I have John 3:16, but it's more John 3 and what Jesus says. You know, when I read it this morning, I just there was a time on my past life where I was into things, done time, was in paramilitaries. I don't want to talk about it. I didn't want to talk about, it's not part of my, but I done things that I couldn't even tell my mum and dad about. Dad went to agree on not knowing that what I did, and I didn't think I was good enough to be saved. I was down so far within the things of the world. Just as my brother said, he knew when he looked at his friends around him what they were doing. I'm glad that's all. I'm glad that's all that we're doing, you know, because you see me do that. I was down, connected with paramilitaries in a big way. I've done things that I shouldn't have done. I feel so bad. And that was in a certain part of my life that I actually did think that I wasn't good enough to be saved. But God can reach down. God can reach out, down to the gutter, you know. God can reach down to that gutter and pull you out of it. And I thank Him for that. I do. So when I read, and I read John 8:16, right from the start to the finish, and each word, not so much of what the disciples were saying there, but what God said. Because it's God's word that can really touch you. And it touched me this morning, very ill and testify it. I just broke down because I knew if He can reach down into the gutter and take a look at me, my dad give his life to God. About 6 months after I came to God, and he turned around and he says, if God can save our William, He can save me. And my dad went to church. He stood in the steps of St. Simons with his minister. And he went to church regular, and the minister says, boy, he says, I thought you were saved. Because he was a church boy. I think that got his heart out of God. But that's what he says. Now, this is the words. He says, if God can save our William, he says, He can save anybody.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay. We're going to have one more song. An elder in the church who joined as an elder a year and a half ago now. Robert's going to come and share a wee bit now as well. Go on ahead, Robert.
Thanks, Jeff.
Well, I'm going to maybe do it just a wee bit different. I'm going to ask you right off the start, what's your favourite verse?
It changes every day. Changes every day.
What's your favourite verse today?
Right. And the one that I thought was challenged about was, now again, I learned this in the authorised, and I'm not speaking the authorised to you, so I have to write it down. Psalm 116, which is my second favourite psalm. Psalm 103 is the very favourite. What shall I return to the Lord for all His goodness to me? I will lift up the cup of salvation and call on the name of the Lord. I will fulfill my vows to the Lord in the presence of all his people. Just really, I suppose, it emphasises, as the two guys were saying for me, that it's not of us. Salvation is of the Lord, totally, from start to finish. And there's nothing we can give him. We just accept, just believe and receive. As we chorus, I must have done it at CSSM when I was doing that. No, you can't get to heaven without SALVATION. As a gift of his love, you receive SALVATION. Shout it out, loud and clear. Sing it out far and near. SALVATION. Well, it's just a free gift. That's why so many people miss it, because of the fact that you don't have to do anything. You give him. Yes, he hasn't asked us to do very much. He's asked us to remember him. We were doing that this morning. I really look forward to that happening every week again soon. And he's asked us to be baptized. It's a request. It doesn't mean you won't get into heaven without baptism. But actually, I was baptized twice. I was baptized as a baby in the Presbyterian, and then when I moved over as a student to Liverpool.
You were baptized once then, Robert.
In a true Greek meaning, Andrew, yes, it's really just baptizo dunked. That's right. Sorry.
No, that's wonderful. So, just to give people a bit of your story, I mean, you're not in fact from England, okay? Because that seems to be something that people assumed, all right? But the fact you grew up Annalong,
and between Annalong and Kilkeel, halfway between a place called Ballymartin, up one of the roads. The kettle's always on. Please do say who you are and if you're passing, yes.
Yes, definitely say who you are. Definitely say who you are.
Yes.
But really, when it came to your faith,
Yeah.
it was secondary school whenever that kind of moment of, am I going to go with this or am I not going to go with this? It was really that kind of, again, kind of 17 in
Yes,
that age
17.
of when it happened. So tell us just a little bit about where that happened, how that came about.
I always had been under conviction. I mean, Christian home, our farm is still there. If you can imagine the arc that a compass would make if you were just going to go about a third of the way around a complete circle, that was the moors encompassing our farm was there. Just for the, so you see, turn to the left side, you would see Eagle Mountain, and then Binion, the big one in front of us, and then Donner, and maybe Burnup peeking out behind it, and what do you call it, Lamagan or Lamada or whatever that was. One of the 7 sevens. I think some of you guys are so good at proving yourselves that. Not me. But no, at Sunday school in the very early days, the subject of eternity came up, and the teacher we had went to 2 Sunday schools, had to get a Christian after that lot. No, it was the Presbyterian Sunday school actually that the subject of eternity. What was eternity? Something. Well, I'll tell you, the teacher said, what eternity is. See those mountains up there? So that was a perfect visual aid. The whole, the wee Sunday school was very close to our home anyway. And she said, well, if you imagine a wee ant takes a little grain of heather or sand or soil or whatever it happened to be, every million years takes that wee grain of sand in its, whatever it carries it in, mouth, beak, claws, whatever, back, and goes down to the sea and deposits it there. Goes all the way back up again and keeps doing that until the mountains are completely flattened. Eternity would just be beginning. Also, having grown up on a farm, you sort of know the way of things. What are those 2 animals doing over there in that corner? You know the cycle that there is of birth, life, and death. It's just the way of things, and you tend to realise, we're not here to stay. And I never, ever thought of life as anything other than something. We're here for a while, and that's it. But that made a powerful impact on me. But it wasn't, as you say, Jeff, until I was 17, and we had this quite dynamic young teacher came and she was starting, well, you know, there always had been a scripture union, but she was quite dynamic and quite into, you know, sharing her faith, and there was, I think, really was little short of a revival in the school, and they ended up, I was invited this particular day, and they were talking about the crown that we would receive, or that those people who would receive who were saved. I knew I wouldn't have been able to give a satisfactory answer for my sin. I was always convicted of sin. I never, you know, thought that I was good enough. And you know, I think that's the problem. We sometimes carry so much guilt with us, even in our Christian lives, and we don't let it go. And even on a daily basis, come and acknowledge our guilt. But anyway, I took this little booklet called Journey into Life, and I've used it with evangelism and so on periodically since then. And it talked about life, it talked about the journey of life. I accepted this booklet from the teacher who was doing the SU that day, and there came to a page at the end saying, if you are quite happy with the way your life is and don't want to go any, don't want to read any further, that's fine. You're not ready for this move. But if you feel that you want to get to know this Creator God, this Redeemer God who bled and died for you on the cross, then you can look on the next page, and if you feel ready, you can pray the prayer. And of course, that was the prayer. I was just ready, because a lot of people, I realised afterwards, had been praying for me and for my salvation, and that they were, you know, couldn't believe it. Then the next day when I said that I had, you know, made that transaction and had asked Jesus to be the Lord of my life. I remember saying, if you don't mind me saying, just backtracking a wee bit, I remember saying to a friend, it was, I suppose I was in sixth form, you know, I'm not sure about this, I have many doubts, and one of the doubts I said was I wouldn't be able to keep it up. And I feared that, you know, I didn't really want to make a false profession. I feared that I would backslide, and he simply said, he took me to the verse in Matthew, they have that written down as well, just to make sure it's consistent with the version. But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. Don't worry about those things. We don't have to keep anything up. We are kept. We are kept by him, and by his grace. That's what it's all about.
Okay. So that was really the kind of big moment then, really. But you then disappeared off to Liverpool University in the 70s, which must have been a very interesting time in Liverpool.
Yeah.
And then you come back and you spend your entire teaching career in one school, which is a very unique thing.
Very large. Yes.
So you will have seen a real change in students, not just in turnover, but in terms of culture, in terms of attitude, in terms of teaching styles. I suppose maybe my question, and I'm maybe pouncing this on you, but for those who have teenage children, what advice can you give as a teacher who's kind of sort of seen it all and seen the schooling change, and how maybe it's changed since those parents have been in school? What would you say to them?
I suppose there are two or three things that changed. A huge sea change in society, what's acceptable, but a huge change in the home, and just to change it. The most worrying thing, I suppose, was when I started there in 1977, at 22, quite wet behind the ears, and you know, it was amazing just to see. I taught a wee bit of RE as well as English, and when teaching RE, you could fairly well guarantee that, generally speaking, most people knew the Bible and knew it reasonably well. You couldn't make that assumption through the 80s, 90s, and less so the noughties and beyond, in 2015. Really was, I would say to parents around the children, grandchildren, as much as is in your power in the scripture. You know, I think, you know, most people here I know well, and you know, you are doing exactly that, and you know, you faithfully send people to places where they will hear the word of God, and they will, be in the company of Christians who want to teach them and want to see them grow and to keep on growing. So that would be, I suppose, one of the main things. But yes, the whole revolution, I remember in the early days, late 70s, it was, it was almost whispered. Watch, so-and-so in that class, parents are divorced. You almost whispered it. Oh my goodness, you're all the odd one now. No, almost now you're not. But it's just been, and then the whole computer revolution as well. It's just completely changed everything, and the attitudes to
I
things.
suppose, and even things where bullying and things like that, it was in the classroom and it stayed in the classroom, or it was in the playground, it stayed in the playground. It's 24/7 now, and kids are plugged in all the time, and it's a very different thing now.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing. People, nearly all schools are tuned into it. They have to be, But at the same time, it's even the way English is taught. It's totally now child-centered, whereas before it was more the teacher tells you this and that's the way it is. But then, over the almost 40 years, it really has been quite remarkable to see the change, even just in the syllabuses and the way the exams are couched and all the rest of it.
I mean, and I suppose a lot of the issues that churches have faced mirror the challenges that schools have faced, the changing in society and morals and culture and the thrust and emphasis that people want to put on things. The churches had to deal with those same changes and kind of figure it out as they go along. So you find yourself now as an elder at AEC and kind of with myself and the others kind of trying to sort of spearhead the work here. As an elder, and well, with this we'll finish, where is your heart now going forward then? As an elder, as a believer, even as a grandfather, where is your heart then?
Yeah, we discussed this earlier in the week. For a start, Brian Hogg there was the one who said that when I was asked, given the great privilege and honour of even considering being an elder, I thought, oh, no, it's not me, I don't I'm ready for that anymore. Brian said, don't wait until you feel you're ready, because you'll never. So it's a learning curve, and I feel I still have to you learn by doing, and I always had difficulties with, I suppose, with even the thought of sick visiting, death home visiting, things like that. But I do find myself now praying with people on the phone, which I thought, oh, it'd be very, very uncomfortable to do. I've learned to do that, and you find people are, generally speaking, very welcoming if you do visit them, and if you do phone them, they are very appreciative, and you feel that sometimes you do make their day. But I suppose an answer specifically to your question about one vision I would have, apart from what I started with, which is that everybody will just see the simplicity of their faith, and that see that you don't have anything to keep up, but we are kept. So I do have, vision might be too strong, but I do have a bit of a burden for Lochrees. And I know we have people, like you two ladies there, Edith and Elizabeth, and of course Andrea, and others, I hope I'm not missing anyone out, who are local to here. And I do feel it would be good to eventually, when things open up, obviously the time's not right yet, but to have some sort of a lunch club, even if it's only once a month, and invite them in. And if we start with just ourselves, that's fine. But people don't usually, look a gift horse in the mouth. And the gifts we have been giving round via the deacons, Christmas boxes and sweets and all the rest of it, chocolates at Christmas and Easter times or whatever else, have been really well received. So I think that is worth praying about and trying to develop that. We have our ladies here and gentlemen who have got inroads in it, into the area, so that would be a good start. But yes, that I think too. I think that probably covers it.
Well, if we take a lead from some of the other places, maybe we should start getting giving out money and things like that. That would really be. I'd be here definitely.
Hillary's very relieved you didn't ask a question about her, was I?
Oh, no, Hillary doesn't know this, but we're going to do a podcast afterwards all about her, so we're going to do that afterwards. Robert, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And we'll go into our last song now, John, and then I'll close in prayer. Robert, thank you so much for sharing with us.